After 2 or 3 years of hard work, I finally finished one of my. It took me a long time to write this. I did a lot of work. I spent a lot of time writing this, and I just want to share my thesis of why Ernest, why Marx, and why postmodernism. Ernest Scared Stupid occupies an unusual place in American cinema. Released in 1991, it belongs simultaneously to children's entertainment, low-budget franchise filmmaking, and a waning era of mass-market character comedy. Ernest P. Worrell, portrayed by Jim Varney, originated as an advertising figure, a hyper-regionalized working-class everyman who exaggerated friendliness and incompetence, rendering him both lovable and disposable. In postmodern terms, Ernest is always a copy without an original, a media construct that migrated from commercials to television to film, carrying with him logic of branding and repetition. From a Marxist perspective, Ernest is also a worker, without stable class power. He is perpetually employed yet never secure, constantly performing labor, physical, emotional, and narrative without accruing capital. His heroism is unpaid overtime. Ernest Scared Stupid literalizes this condition by placing Ernest in a small town threatened by a troll who petrifies children, turning them into collectible stone commodities. The film's horror comedy premise masks a deeper structure: extraction, hoarding, and accumulation versus improvised solidarity. Postmodern Marxism provides a useful lens because the film is neither realist nor revolutionary. It does not imagine systemic change. Instead, it stages contradiction through irony, parody, and excess. Ernest does not overthrow capitalism, he muddles through it. This essay argues that the film's politics reside not in explicit critique, but in slapstick failure, recycled myths, and the refusal of heroic competence. 2. Ernest as precarious subject, the petite bourgeois nobody. Marxist class analysis often struggles with figures like Ernest. He is not a proletarian in a classical factory sense, nor a capitalist. He is closer to what contemporary theorists call the precarious worker, unpaid, overflexible, and emotionally available. Ernest's defining traits, helpfulness, enthusiasm, and incompetence, map neatly onto late capitalist expectations of service labor. He is always on, always willing, and always failing upward without advancement. In Ernest Scared Stupid, Ernest's labor is community maintenance. He volunteers, fixes, warns, and comforts, yet his labor is not recognized as labor. Children mock him, adults dismiss him, and authority figures tolerate him only insofar as he absorbs risk. From a Marxist standpoint, Ernest performs surplus labor for the town without receiving surplus value. His reward is inclusion, temporary, fragile, and revocable. Postmodern theory complicates this by emphasizing Ernest's performativity. He is not simply exploited, he performs exploitation cheerfully. This aligns with Slovak Zizek's describes as cynical ideology. Subjects know they are being used, yet continue anyway. Ernest's catchphrase and exaggerated expressions function as self-commodification, transforming personality into a consumable resource. Part 3. Trantor the Troll. Archaic capital and primitive accumulation. The antagonist Trantor is not merely a monster, he is an embodiment of primitive accumulation. He emerges from the past, awakened by the disruption of land and memory, and immediately begins turning children into stone statues. Objects to be stored, counted, and possessed. This process mirrors what Marx describes as the violent origin of capital: enclosure, dispossession, and the conversion of living beings into assets. Trantor's lair resembles a warehouse of frozen value. The children, immobilized yet intact, function as commodities, awaiting exchange or display. Unlike modern capitalists, Trantor does not circulate commodities, he hoards them. This marks him as an archaic figure, a pre-neoliberal accumulator whose logic is static rather than speculative. Postmodernism reframes Trantor as pastiche. He is an amalgam of family fairy tale troll Halloween iconography and low-budget animatronics. His threat is real within the narrative, but artificial in construction. This artificiality undermines the seriousness of accumulation itself, suggesting that capital's violence persists even when stripped of grandeur. Children in Part 4. Children as commodities, innocence and exchange value. Children in Ernest Scared Stupid occupy a contradictory position. Ideologically, they represent innocence, futility, and community continuity. Economically, they are potential labor power, future consumers, and emotional investments. Trantor's petrification of children literalizes the commodification of futurity under capitalism. By turning children into stone, Trantor arrests time. This resonates with Marxist critiques of capitalism's tendency to exploit the future through debt, environmental degradation, and intergenerational inequality. The children's immobilization is a grotesque visualization of this process. The film resolves this contradiction through systemic change, but not through systemic change, but through restoration. The children are returned to normal, the status quo reasserted. From a postmodern Marxist view, this restoration is ideological closure. The system survives by presenting crisis as a temporary aberration rather than a structural feature. Part 5. The Carnivalesque and the Politics of Stupidity. Michael Bakhtin's concept of the carnivalesque is central to understanding Ernest. Carnival inverts hierarchy, celebrates the grotesque, and suspends norms. Ernest embodies carnival permanently. He mocks authority by existing outside of competence, turning failure into spectacle. In Ernest Scared Stupid, stupidity becomes a weapon. Ernest defeats Trantor not through strength or intelligence, but through improvisation, luck, and children's milk, a domestic, feminized, non-heroic substance. This anti-epic resolution undermines traditional masculine hero narratives. From a Marxist perspective, stupidity here is a double-edged. On one hand, it resists technocratic rationality and elite expertise. On the other, it risks reinforcing anti-intellectualism, which capitalism often exploits. The film leaves the tension unresolved, a hallmark of postmodern politics. Part 6. Nostalgia, folklore, and the commodification of the past. The film's use of folklore, trolls, curses, rhymes, signals nostalgia for pre-capitalist myth, yet this nostalgia is often commodified. Folklore appears as entertainment, stripped of its original communal function and repackaged for consumption. Marxist theory, such as Frederick James, describes postmodern nostalgia as a depthless replacing historical understanding with aesthetic recycling. Ernest Scared Stupid exemplifies this. The past is not a site of alternative social relations, but a warehouse of monsters. Ernest meditates this nostalgia. He respects the past, but misunderstands it, employing it to contemporary subjects' fragmented relation to history. This misrecognition prevents a revolutionary consciousness while enabling commodic play. Part 7. Gender, domesticity, and milk as counter-commodity. One of the film's most discussed elements is milk's power over Trantor. Milk is associated with nourishment, domestic labor, and femininity. Counters the troll's petrifying extraction. In Marxist feminist terms, milk represents reproductive labor, the unpaid work that sustains capitalism yet remains undervalued. By weaponizing milk, the film systemically elevates reproductive labor over productive labor. However, this elevation remains symbolic. The social relations that marginalize such labor are not challenged. They are temporarily reversed for comedic effect. Part 8. Failure as method, earnest and anti-heroic praxis. Ernest never fully succeeds. Even when he wins, it is accidental. The persistent failure aligns with postmodern skepticism towards grand narratives of progress. Ernest's praxis is not revolutionary, but adaptive. From a Marxist standpoint, this raises a critical question. Does celebrating failure neutralize critique? The film suggests that survival, not transformation, is the goal. Ernest's victory restores normalcy without addressing underlying precarity. Yet there is a radical potential in this refusal of mastery. By denying viewers a competent hero, the film destabilizes meritorical myths. Ernest survives not because he deserves to, but because he persists. 9. Late capitalist horror comedy and ideological containment. Horror comedy as a genre excels at managing anxiety. It allows viewers to confront fear while maintaining distance through humor. In Ernest Scared Stupid, capitalist anxieties, child endangerment, community fragility, historical violence are contained within slapstick. This containment is ideological. The film acknowledges crisis but resolves it without systemic critique. Marxist analysis must therefore read again the grain, identifying what is displaced by laughter. 10. Conclusion. Ernest as a symptom and critique. Ernest Scared Stupid is not a revolutionary film. It does not imagine alternatives to capitalism or articulate class struggle explicitly. Yet as a postmodern Marxist text, it reveals contradictions central to late capitalist culture. Precarity without politics, nostalgia without history, labor without recognition. Ernest himself is both symptom and critique. He embodies the cheerful exploitation capitalism demands while expressing its absurdity through excess. His stupidity is not ignorance, but a refusal of rationalized domination. In this sense, Ernest Scared Stupid endures not despite its silliness, but because of it. The film's low status, disposable aesthetics, and franchise character mirror the conditions it is unwittingly critiquing. To take Ernest seriously is not to elevate him to high art, but to recognize that ideology often hides in the places we least expect it, because milk, monsters, and a man who never quits know what he's doing. My references are Michael Bakhtin, Michael Rabius and His World, Jameson Frederick, Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism, Marx Karl, Capital, Volume 1, Zizek Shlovij, The Sublime Object of Ideology, and Varney, Jim, Ernest Scared Stupid, 1991. Thank you. That was my presentation. I've spent multiple years working on that. I hope you like my thesis on Ernest Scared Stupid.